Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste everyone. Welcome to Navaratri Sadhana. We are on the 4th day. And I think we can already begin. We can start. Once again, we'll start with our Nadi Shodhana and then we will move on to the mantra chanting with Omkar and moving forward. So taking your position, sitting comfortably, spine straight, body soft. Whenever you feel your breath settling down, Nadi Shodhana. Alternate nostril breathing. Remember to keep your spine straight, shoulders soft and relaxed. The practice in itself doesn't involve moving the head, so be mindful of that. Remember that if you find your right arm tiring, then you can support the elbow with your left palm.
कथा भी है यहाँ
With your next exhale from the left nostril, finish your Nadi Shodhana practice and sit comfortably with your palms in your lap. We'll now begin 3 Omkaras. Sitting comfortably, soft face, soft body and shoulders. Taking a deep breath in. Om. Om. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. With your next inhale, feel the breath moving into your body and very gently dip your chin down towards your breastbone. Hold your breath. And in that moment where you hold your breath, bring your attention to your breastbone. Then slowly release and inhale again. A couple of breaths. And repeat the practice one more time. Inhaling deeply. Holding the breath, dipping the chin down, bringing your awareness to your breastbone. Lifting your chin as you exhale and taking another inhale in. Repeat the practice one more time. And at the end of the practice, just sit comfortably with your eyes closed. Now bring to mind your Guru ordained mantra or Soham and gently begin repeating it mentally. Now stop thinking your mantra and just sit comfortably with your eyes closed. We will now move on to the chanting. We will begin with Maha Mrtyunjaya Mantra, followed by the 32 names of Maa Durga. Maha Mrtyunjaya Mantra 3 times. Bring to mind a sankalpa for good health, well-being, freedom from pain and suffering, for yourself, for your dear ones, those around you, all beings around you, in our communities, in our society, state, country, the whole world, and the whole universe, and beyond. Repeat the sankalpa mentally 3 times. We will now begin Maha Mrtyunjaya Mantra 11 times. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritaat. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We'll move to now chant 32 names of Maa Durga 3 times. Before that, bring to mind a sankalpa for the removal of all obstacles. Obstacles from our lives, hurdles, any kind of calamities. Not just for us, but for everyone around us. Repeat this sankalpa mentally 3 times. Om Durga Durgartishamani Durga Padvinivarini Durga Machedini Durga Sadhini Durga Nashini Durga Todharini Durga Nihantri Durga Mapaha Durga Madnyanada Durga Daitya Lokadavanala Durga Ma Loka Durga Matma Swarupini Durga Marga Prada Durga Mavidya Durga Mashrita Durga Madhyana Sanstana Durga Madhyana Bhasini Durga Moha Durga Maga Durga Martha Swarupini Durga Ma Sura Samhantri Durga Ma Yudhadharini Durga Mangi Durga Mata Durgamya Durgameshwari Durga Bhima Durga Bhama Durga Bha Durga Darini Om Durga Durgartishamani Durga Padvinivarini Durga Machedini Durga Sadhini Durga Nashini Durga Todharini Durga Nihantri Durga Mapaha Durga Madnyanada Durga Daitya Lokadavanala Durga Ma Loka Durga Matma Swarupini Durga Marga Prada Durga Mavidya Durga Mashrita Durga Madhyana Sanstana Durga Madhyana Bhasini Durga Moha Durga Maga Durga Martha Swarupini Durga Ma Sura Samhantri Durga Ma Yudhadharini Durga Mangi Durga Mata Durgamya Durgameshwari Durga Bhima Durga Bhama Durga Bha Durga Darini Om Durga Durgartishamani Durga Padvinivarini Durga Machedini Durga Sadhini Durga Nashini Durga Todharini Durga Nihantri Durga Mapaha Durga Madnyanada Durga Daitya Lokadavanala Durga Ma Loka Durga Matma Swarupini Durga Marga Prada Durga Mavidya Durga Mashrita Durga Madhyana Sanstana Durga Madhyana Bhasini Durga Moha Durga Maga Durga Martha Swarupini Durga Ma Sura Samhantri Durga Ma Yudhadharini Durga Mangi Durga Mata Durgamya Durgameshwari Durga Bhima Durga Bhama Durga Bha Durga Darini Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Pay attention and become aware of the very subtle vibrations of the 32 names of Maa Durga. And as the chants and as the vibration of these names slowly starts settling down, prepare and let us prepare ourselves to listen to the Kilaka Stotram from the Devi Mahatmya. The Kilaka Stotram is a very short stotram, very short one, because it just seals the vibrations of the Kavacham, the Argala Stotram, and prepares us for the Mahatmya, which will be not, we will not be reciting it here, we will not be reading it here as well, but just these three are more than sufficient to give us that armor as well as the preparation of mind and spirit for the practice and for our sadhana. Atha Kilaka Stotram Om Asya Shri Kilaka Mantrasya Shiva Rishihi Anushtup Chandaha Shri Maha Saraswati Devata Shri Jagadamba Prityarthe Saptashati Pathangatvena Jape Viniyogaha. Om Namah Chandikayai. Markandeyo Vacha Vishuddha Dehaya Trivedi Divya Chakshushe Shreyah Prapti Nimittaya Namas Somardharine Sarvametad Vijaniyan Mantranamapi Kilakam Sopi Kshemam Avapnoti Satatan Japya Tatparaha Siddhyantucchatanadini Karmani Sakalanyapi Etena Stuvatan Devim Stotra Vrindena Bhaktitaha Namantro Naushadantasya Nakinchidapi Vidyate Vina Japyena Siddhyetu Sarvamucchatanadikam Samagranyapi Setsyanti Lokashankami haraha Krutva Nimantrayamasa Sarvamevamidam Shubham Stotram Vai Chandikayastu Taccha Guhyam Chakarasah Samapnoti Sapunyena Tanyathavanniyantranam Sopi Kshemamavapnoti Sarvameva na sanshayah Krishnayam va Chaturdashyam Ashtamyam va Samahitah Dadati Pratigrahnati Nanyathesha Prasidati Itham Rupena Kilena Mahadevena Kilitam Yo Nishkilam Vidhayainam Chandin Japati Nityashaha Sasiddhassa Ganasotha Gandharvo Jayate Dhruvam Nachaiva Patavantasya Bhayam Kwapi na Jayate Napa Mrityuvashanyati Mrute cha Mokshamapnuyat Jnatva Prarabhya Kurvita Hyakurvano Vinashyati Tato Jnatvaiva Sampurnamidam Prarabhyate Budhaihi Saubhagyadi cha Yatkinchid Drishyate Lalana Jane Tatsarvam Tatprasadena Tena Japyamidam Shubham Shanaistu Japyamanesmin Stotre Sampattiruchakaihi Bhavatyeva Samagrapi Tatah Prarabhyameva Tata Aishwaryam Tat Prasadena Saubhagyarogyameva cha Shatruhanif Paro Mokshaha Stuyate Sanna Kinjanaihi Chandikam Hridayenapi Yasmaret Satatannaraha Hridyam Kamamavapnoti Hridi Devi Sadavase Agrato Mum Mahadeva Kritam Kilakavaranam Nishkilancha Tatha Krutva Patitavyam Samahitaihi Iti Shri Bhagavatyaha Kilaka Stotram Sampurnam. Kshama Prarthana. Aparadha sahasrani kriyante harnisham maya daso yamiti mam matva kshamasva parameshwari avahanam na janami visarjanam pujan chaiva na janami kshamyatam parameshwari mantrahinam kriyahinam bhaktihinam sureshwari yat pujitam maya devi paripurnam tadastu me aparadhashatam krutva jagadambeti chochare yangatim samavapnoti natam brahmadayas suraha saparadhosmi sharanam praptastvam jagadambike idanimanukampyoham yathechhasi tatha kuru अज्ञानाद्विस्मृतेर्भ्रान्त्या यन्यूनमधिकं कृतं तत्सर्वं क्षम्यतां देवी प्रसीद परमेश्वरी कामेश्वरी जगन्मातः सच्चिदानन्दविग्रहे गृहाणार्चामि मां प्रीत्या प्रसीद परमेश्वरी गुह्यातिगुह्य गोप्त्री त्वं गृहाणास्मत्कृतं जपं सिद्धिर्भवतु मे देवी त्वत्प्रसादात् सुरेश्वरी श्री दुर्गार्पणमस्तु श्री जगदम्बार्पणमस्तु ओम Hri Om Tat Sat. Today is the fourth day. We finished 1/3 the sadhana. We've completed 1/3 of celebrating Navaratri. By now, we're already in the flow of things. We're already in the flow of the celebration and the veneration. What we need to do right now is to recognize that we are in the midst of sadhana, and that the purpose of sadhana is to purify ourselves even further. So we're looking at Shuddhi here. We're looking at purification. We're looking at Chitta Shuddhi, because at the end of the day, there is no Jiva Shuddhi, right? There is no Sharirik or Shariras Shuddhi, the bodily, the physical Shuddhi is not what we are working on here. Ideally, before we begin our sadhana, we have already had a bath, or we have cleansed ourselves, at least physically, washed our hands, feet in the evening, and prepared ourselves for the practice. If it's early in the morning, most of us would have had a shower before we even get on to sadhana. So we're not talking about bodily purification at this point in time. What we're attempting in sadhana, that's also purification.
They agree with your points.
She always agrees with my points. I think this is the first sadhana where she hasn't made so much of a noise. Anyway, so it is not the physical purification that we are actually looking for so much, because the body eventually will have to move further and we won't have to look so much for the body. We have to take care of it. And that's a very important aspect, because our body has to be available to us so that we can actually do any of the mind and the mental and the spiritual practices. The body is important. But in the sadhana, for that we have the entire year also to prepare our bodies. When we are devoting specific time at special potent opportunities like Navaratri, or for example, when you're doing an upasana around Ganesh Chaturthi, or any of those special moments of sadhana, that is when all the work that you've done for your body throughout the year comes to show you that, okay, see, this is the progress you've done. This is how long you can sit. It doesn't mean that you have to work for all the other days of the year so that during sadhana you have to sit in an impeccably still position. Okay, that's not the purpose. So what is then the purpose of the sadhana? Why are we doing this during the sadhana? It is because the physical purification has happened somewhere or the other, or it's happening a little by little. But here we are looking more in terms of purification of our chitta. Again, I repeat, the word is chitta that we are purifying. We are not purifying the Atma, because the Atma is already impeccably clear and pure. What we impurify, what we mess up with, is the chitta, the repository of everything. Like we say, when those of you who have taken the recent classes with me where I talk about the chitta in terms of understanding with the rice and dal story. How many of you were there when I explained it with the rice and dal? Some of you must have been there. So once you've eaten all the rice and dal, only the plate remains. And that's your chitta. You need to have the clear plate. Okay. And it's not just the chitta, it's not the chitta actually, it's that is clouded with all the food that you have. And once you've moved the rajas and you've moved the tamas, then sattva remains. But you have to go beyond the sattva. You have to go beyond that clear plate to actually recognize what is Brahman or what is Purusha, right? What is Purusha and Prakriti. And that is, if all of this is Prakriti, then that is Purusha. And why, when I said yesterday that it is only the Devi who can help you connect Atma with Paramatma, because it is only Devi, it is the Shakti of Devi which creates all the gunas and all the nature and everything that is mobile. So gunas, all of that, the 3 gunas and the Pancha Mahabhutas, and all of them are actually just Shakti. So it is only Shakti which veils you. It is Shakti which creates that Maya in front of you, that illusion. And because of that, she's also called Maha Maya. And because she exists, you have the veil around you. You have the veil in front of your eyes, which doesn't let you see Purusha or the Atma. It doesn't allow you to see any of that. It doesn't allow you to see the Paramatma. And it is only with her grace that when we move through this practice, right, that with that grace, the anugraha that will come through the sadhana of constantly working on purifying yourself, will you come to that point of her giving you the grace of connecting with the Paramatma. But if that's easy, that's not easy. That isn't easy. So I want to tell you a little bit of the practice that I shared with you yesterday and today. That is at the beginning and soon after Nadi Shodhana. And that is why, if you noticed yesterday and today, we didn't begin with Omkar. We didn't begin the sadhana with Omkar. We began the sadhana after Nadi Shodhana. We began the sadhana after whatever was your pranayama practice. You would have done some kind of asana, maybe, before the practice itself, before coming in here. So you've done some asana, you've done some pranayama, and now I said, okay, then we will do the Nadi Shodhana because I gave you a more subtle practice. The practice was to inhale, hold your breath, come down. So it's almost like a Jalandhar Bandha. Almost, but it isn't fully. Okay, because I didn't ask you to hold the bandha tight. I didn't ask you to do anything. All I told you was bring your chin lower and bring your attention to your breastbone. All the while you're holding your breath, right? What did you feel at that point in time? What did you feel when you held your breath and brought your attention here to your collarbone, to your breastbone, your sternum? Anyone? The normal.
I felt like there was it's a very strange feeling, but today especially I had this feeling like there was this whole universe that I was turning into, like this complete space cut away from everything else when I held my breath and brought my attention down. It was a very intense cut away from everything.
So what did anyone else feel? Something similar, or maybe different words that you would use, but anyone else? Anyone else feel anything different? Okay.
I felt stillness. Like it just felt like, it didn't feel like a pause, but it didn't feel like movement either. It was like completely like inward and like focused still. I can't there is no flow, no pause. I don't know how to explain that.
So it's almost like what Akshaya said just now, where she said that she was like, it was like cut off, right? The way you were cut off from something, and it was neither moving nor it was just there, right?
Correct.
So, and Vipin says he was just focused on the breath, and that was that one single thought that you had, right, Vipin? One single thought there. Where else have we heard this thought? Where else have we heard this moment of one single thought? How many times have we heard of ekagrata? That one-pointedness. And what is that one-pointedness? That one-pointedness eventually takes us through dharana towards dhyana so that we can get into that state of yoga. And what is that yoga? That yoga is where we actually recognize the difference between prakriti and purusha. That is where that samyama is there. That is where there is that merging. That is where, in that space, in that moment, right? In that moment, you are in connection with your Atma because you're holding your breath. And when you're holding your breath, eventually the next instruction was when you feel the need that, you can't hold on anymore. That was the instruction I gave you yesterday. I didn't repeat it again today. To release, exhale, and then take the next breath in. Okay? Because when do you connect with Atma at that point? It's almost like you're waiting for the next breath. It's that disconnection with being alive. It's the disconnection with your physicality and connection with all that is, okay? With the Paramatma. We're not there yet, but this practice brings us where? It brings us into that state of samyama because there is no other thought. It brings you in the presence of now. It brings you in this present moment. And in every moment, when we are present completely in that moment, like Ekta said, there is no thought of a previous moment and there is no thought of the next moment. Like Vipin said, the focus was only on that breath. It was just that moment. And in that moment, what you've experienced is that sense of connection, is that sense of union, that those tiny moments of every breath that we take are a reminder for us that even though we don't recognize it, every pause, every point between one exhale and the next inhale is that point when we connect with Atma. Okay? And that is only when we pause so much that we are paying attention to it. If we don't pay attention to it, then life just happens, right? We are constantly bombarded with all sorts of thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, distracting thoughts, movies, the next party or whatever it is that we have to go to, the next task that we have to do, anything, right? We keep getting caught up with all of these things. And when all of these thoughts come into our mind, right, what's the next thing that happens? We have the impurities that remain because they're not complete thoughts, right? They're partial thoughts. In multitasking, you're partially doing everything at the same time. You're not doing one thing at one time. You're doing many things. You're watching something, you're listening to something, you're also having breakfast, and you're typing an email out to tell someone that you'll be late for the next meeting. You're doing multiple things. You're not fulfilling and completing one whole thought at one time, right? So what happens? Eventually, there'll be some thoughts that say, okay, we'll just park you and you'll do it later, right? And we call that efficiency, right? We call that efficiency. But eventually, all this efficiency that we work towards creates a mess in our heads, right? It creates so much of these thoughts that are going on circulating because then you realize that you didn't do something and then you're again aggravated and then you're triggered into something. And what happens then is that you have an accumulation, not just of thoughts, but you also have an accumulation of all sorts of emotions and feelings that come up and start creating turbulence around you. Okay? And in that turbulence, what happens is your peace of mind and your samyama, the the equanimity or that stillness of your mind or the calmness of your mind is lost. And when you lose your calm, you're more susceptible to have emotional outbursts. And when you have emotional outbursts, or when you're heavily emotionally charged about anything, what's the one thing that you cannot have at that point in time? You cannot have clarity of mind, which means that you cannot have viveka. You cannot discern anymore. You cannot make a rational decision. You make emotional decisions then. You make emotional choices. And these emotional choices then are or can be taken advantage of by those who would want to take advantage of them. They would probably be using their viveka, saying, listen, this person is emotionally charged. This person is not using their viveka. So let me use my viveka and take advantage of them, right? That's a slightly adharmic way of working. But the point here is not for us to control somebody else. The point here is to get to that point of purification when it comes to ourselves. So why is it so important? It's important because the sadhana that we are doing is meant for purification. On the fourth day, when we are going to the second third of the Navaratri, the first third is for us to prepare. We've prepared, we've heard, we've understood, we've done these things. These 3 days are for us to deepen the sadhana so that we start really doing the scrubbing work. The first 3 days are just rinsing, washing, maybe putting some of that cream cleanser over the cooking range so that we can cut through the grease. Day 4, 5, and 6 is where you take the sponge and the steel whatever and you scrub it. That's what we are doing in these 3 days. These 3 days is where the focus is strongly inwards. And we start purifying our thoughts. And we don't have to immediately say, okay, fine, good thought. Okay, fine, bad thought. No. As simple as this practice was, if you do this practice a couple of times during the next 3 days, the next 2 days, that is, we're already towards the end of this day. But even if you do it a couple of times, just one breath is sufficient. Just inhale, hold, pause, and come out again. You do this a couple of times and you start developing the practice and you start developing the familiarity of what it is like to be in that paused moment. Because in that moment, if you noticed in today's Kilaka Stotram, when I was chanting, the 15th verse, okay, that's where I said, Chandikam hridayenapi yasmaret satatan naraha. Wait, this is the last part of it, okay, is Hridi Devi sada vaset. I'm repeating that again. Hridi Devi sada vaset. Okay. Now, does anyone have an idea what that means and why I brought that up in connection here? I know Navya is here, a little better prepared with Sanskrit. So, Navya, would you want to unmute or tell us what that means?
Yeah, I can try. So, Hridi Devi Sada Vaset means the Devi resides within the heart.
Sada, also.
Every time, always.
Okay. So, now that is what is there in the scripture, that the Devi is always in our heart. Okay. If the Devi is always in our heart, now we're talking about tapping into that and remembering that, which means that we don't have to look far. We don't have to say that, okay, like when we said, when we call Durga, she won't come. She won't just ride the lion, tiger and come over here and sit here right next to her. She won't do that, right? We won't see that as such. Or if I say, okay, when you say Jagadamba, she'll just suddenly come dropping everything and come and manifest here in front of me. No, that is not what I mean. I mean that the moment you have that bhakti and that shraddha, because it is there in one of the shastrams, it is there that Hridi Devi Sada Vaset, she is here when she is within us. Within whom? Bhaktanam, right? We're in the bhakts, not in someone like you. We can't pick up someone from the road who doesn't do anything, who's sitting there and smoking a joint and saying, hey, listen, Devi's in your heart. And they'll be like, what? You can't. This makes sense only to someone who would believe enough to know that the Devi is in their heart. And for all of you who are here on this sadhana, or for those of you who are watching the live stream or who'll watch the recording later, if you're here to this part and daily on the 4th day, then I can tell this to you freely, because you are one of those people who would believe that that is there, that exists in your heart. And for that, you don't have to reach very far. You have to purify your mind so that you can constantly be in touch with this, so that you get familiar with the feeling of that very subtle feeling that Devi is in your heart, that your divine mother is there with you all the time. So that when your need arises, you don't have to scream hoarsely and say, oh, Jagadamba, Jagadamba. You don't have to scream that all the time. You just have to whisper it and you'll hear it within. And I don't know how many of you have had this firsthand experience, but I have had it. Okay, Ekta turned her video on just so she can show me that she's laughing. Okay, but that firsthand experience I have had. And I say this not because it's the sadhana and I say it. I have sadhanas every year for Navaratri and Deepavali. But when it comes to this, I say it because it comes from experience, that it is there. The draw that you have towards the sadhana is sufficient to tell you that your faith does allow the energy to open up around you. So allow that faith to bolster you. Allow that faith itself to lift you. And remember, when I say faith, it is not andha bhakti. It is not blind faith. Okay? This is not superstitious blind faith. And I repeat, I've told you right from day one that the Mahatmya can be read as a fairy tale. And for the person who believes that it's a fairy tale, they will just take it as, hey, listen, it's a fairy tale. I mean, it's of a woman sitting on a tiger or a lion and turning into 100 different women and then drinking drops of blood here and there. And you want me to believe that? That is a fairy tale understanding of it. And I have asked you repeatedly to go to the symbolism of it, to go of what it means, to go deeper into what it means, which means that none of you are people of blind faith. None of you should be people of blind faith. Those of you who are my students, you're definitely not blind faith people. Okay. So this is not a question of that faith. This is not a blind faith person saying, just do whatever someone's telling you. No, this is the faith with which you do your sadhana so that you can get chitta shuddhi, so that you can use your buddhi for viveka, so that you can make rational decisions, not just in life here, in the daily transactional activity of what we do, the vyaparavadi one, whatever we do, but it's not that one. It is the decisions or the clarity which will tell you what is dharmic, what is adharmic, or what is a good choice, what is not a good choice. What do I need to do now? What do I not need to do? What do I need to study? Who do I need to study with? All of these kinds of things are very transactional. That is also going to, Viveka is going to help you with that as well. But the Viveka, the deeper Viveka here that we're looking for is your ability to understand wisdom, to understand knowledge, to understand the jnanam. And that jnanam will only come to you when you have chitta shuddhi. And that chitta shuddhi can come only when you have the faith that it will come, that you are worthy of it, that you're deserving of it. Because if you were not worthy of it, you won't be here in the sadhana. And you're here in the sadhana because the Devi does reside in us. And that's what the scripture has also always told us. Okay. So it may look like one vicious circle saying, where does it begin? Where does it end? Don't break your head around it. You do not need to break your head to wonder, hey, where did we begin? There is no beginning and there is no end. And that's why there is Mahakali. That's why she is the Kal herself. She is time herself. There is no beginning or an end to her. And that's why she is also the Parashakti. That's why she is Shakti herself. And that's why she is Prakriti. They are both the infinite principles. Just like Purusha is, that's how Prakriti is. There is no beginning. There is no end to them. They just are. And if they just are, then that faith also just is. And with that faith, any of us, when we use that to bolster us, then we are able to actually purify our thoughts, or purify the nature of thoughts that come in. And again, I repeat, it's not easy. So you have to really put in. It should be, this is how it is. This is the choice that I have to make. You know, I have to constantly work on this. So I'll leave you with that thought to introspect. I'll leave you with the thought of Chitta Shuddhi to introspect, so that we can go deeper on this tomorrow. And then there will be some more tools, and then there'll be some more things for you to. So you see, the sadhana in itself is not necessarily, or the satsang over here, right? And we have 5 more minutes. The satsang in itself is not for me to give you capsules, because there are some times where you would introspect and reflect or say something that then brings in everything. A satsang, what is a satsang? Satsang is sangat, satka sangat also, you know, like you have the association or the company of, well, we usually say like-minded people, but it's also this like in the good company, right? And it's not the company, this is not just to self-glorify and say that, you know, if you're spending time with me for 1 hour, then you're in good company. But it is the kind of conversation that you have, you know, the kind of energy that you build in just with those of you on the call also, right? Those of the people around you, what's building over there, what kind of a community, what's the energy that's being built, and that energy is what is going to support you. So even though, you know, I say that yes, it's going to be difficult, it's difficult because eventually it's a lonely path, eventually it's a solo path. But to know that even though it's a single you know, an individual journey, that you have other people also making those individual journeys around the world, and that your journey is not entirely alone. And that even though, yes, you can send me a message and, you know, I can send you something back, or you can connect with each other. Some of you are friends, some of you have never met each other ever before. Then there is Akshaya's butterfly over there, which also, you know, the butterfly effect goes all over. So, but the point is that in that connection, we realize that even though we may be separately walking the path, the one common thing that we all have, at least from this conversation now, is that we all have the same energy in our hearts. We all have that same energy of the Devi, of the mother, in our hearts, supporting us with a lot of compassion. Okay? And even if sometimes it's a tight rap on the knuckles saying, don't do that, just come back here. That's also maternal compassion. Okay? And so even in the Bhagavad Gita, right, it says that someone who has this viveka will not see any drawback or any negative outcome as a negative outcome. Okay? There is always something to learn from it. They'll never see an experience as a failure. They'll always see it as something they've learned from it. And that bolstering is also what we learn from all these negative experiences that we would say that the mother is teaching us. It's the same thing. Because at the end of the day, it is only the energy of Prakriti which moves and changes, nothing else. It is not the energy of Purusha. Purusha is just there sitting and watching. Whatever happens, the movement, the consequence, the push, the fall, the anger, the violence to some extent, you know, or even the non-violence, or even the result of it, all of that is all Prakritic in nature. And it's only Prakriti. So on that note, I leave you to introspect on purification, on Chitta Shuddhi, and on what that means to you. Tomorrow's session, I will have something more to say on that, and something where you'd be able to share as well. Okay. Any thoughts, anyone? Any questions? Anything someone would like to share or add? No? All good? Ankita, you came forward. Anything? Okay. All right. Then I shall see you all tomorrow and have a very good rest of the evening for those of us in India, and rest of the day, those of us who are outside of India. Namaste. Hari Om. See you.